listening to CMDA Matters, the weekly podcast of Christian Medical and Dental Associations. Here's your host, Dr. Mike Chupp.
Well, welcome to CMDA Matters, and we have hit December, closing out 2024. I've got some wonderful news to share with you today, friends. A small but very passionate group of CMDA champions have generously committed to a $100,000 matching gift. And this means that every dollar that you give, friends, will be matched dollar for dollar up to $100,000. And that will help us significantly toward our $1 million giving goal by December 31st. Your support is critical. By giving today, you can double the impact of your donation. To give, you can just visit cmda.org/give or call our stewardship team 888-230-2637. You know, one of the key virtues and characteristics that we value so much here at CMDA is servant leadership, because that's the type of leaders that God is calling each one of us to be. Though many people are attracted to the concept of being a servant leader in their homes or their workplaces and their communities, they don't know how to do it or even sometimes where to begin. And that's why I'm excited about today's interview, because we're going to focus on developing and building servant leaders within healthcare, right from the top. I am joined this week by Dr. George Stubblefield and Larry Gilmore from Jessup University. And we're going to talk about a new faith-based Master of Healthcare Administration program that they are developing in Southern California. So keep on listening, and you're going to hear more. Well, I am delighted today to welcome to CMDA Matters two guests who are coming to us from the West Coast, and specifically Jessup University. And one of those is the Dean of the School for Natural and Applied Sciences at Jessup University, Dr. George Stubblefield, who's been involved in designing and starting a number of healthcare-related programs, especially in the arena of nursing. And with him is Dr. Larry Gilmore, who's a professor there at Jessup, who's involved in a program that these guests tell me is going to start here in the very near future in January of 2025, a Master's of Health Administration. And one of our board members who lives out there in California, Dr. Darylyn Falk, recommended that we have this conversation today. So welcome, George Stubblefield, Dr. Stubblefield, and Larry Gilmore to the program.
Thank you, Mike, so much. Appreciate the opportunity to share with you and your listeners what we believe is an exciting new program.
Yeah, very much appreciate this opportunity.
Well, Dr. Stubblefield, if I could just ask before we dive into the details of a Master's of Healthcare Administration, how long have you been Dean there at Jessup? And for our listeners' benefit, so they can have a context, I'm a Midwesterner, really don't know much at all about Jessup. So tell us briefly about Jessup University.
So Jessup actually has been around for 80 some odd years. They started out at San Jose Christian College, actually San Jose Bible College, switched to San Jose Christian College. Then they moved up here in 2007, still a Bible college. But in 2009, they made a transition into a liberal arts college. They still kept their strong biblical roots and theological concepts, but they started adding liberal arts programs to it. I came on in 2009 as an adjunct. They had no science programs here at all. It was just that transition when they were adding. So I was blessed and to be hired to start developing some of the science programs. At that time, I was still in clinical practice. I was also teaching at some other educational institutions of higher ed as an adjunct. And I just saw this as an incredible opportunity for me to come in and work in an environment that I could not only live and share and talk about my faith, but I could impact others. The other institutions I worked for at that time were all secular institutions. And I almost lost a position once because I spoke my mind about my faith and my belief. So this was a godsend as far as I was concerned. Door was open. I ran in, started developing science courses, anatomy, physiology, biology, all the courses I could develop as quickly as possible. And being that I was the only science professor, I got to teach them all too. So it was a great experience. From that point forward, we started adding degrees. I wrote the first major was a biology major. Then we opened up a kinesiology major, and we started making hires. Faculty people came in, had great people come in. They were what we call pedigree. They're strong Christian professors, but they're from Stanford. They came from Harvard. We had people come in to help us build the program. They didn't stay around long, but they helped us get through that initial process. That's been going on. God's blessed us at Jessup, especially the sciences. Now we're one of the largest schools. We have 5 different schools at Jessup. The School of Natural Applied Sciences is one of the largest, fastest growing schools, mainly because of our focus on health sciences. And that's where I've spent most of my time in doing that. Having 40 years in clinical practice and currently right now about going into my 21st year in academia and upper education, it's been amazing to see how God has used some simple things. Like when I first came here, all I thought about was, I hope I can get a full-time job. I hope they just hire me as a full-time faculty. That would just be the best thing in my life. I could retire as a full-time faculty. But with God, every time you think this is what you want, He says, well, I've got a few other things planned for you. So I started out as an adjunct, moved to a full-time core faculty, and over the last 8 years, I've been the dean of the School of Natural Applied Sciences.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that history with our listeners. And as I segue to talk to Larry, I just wanted to point out that context matters. And as I said, I didn't know much about Jessup, and having a Christian school that focuses multiple different disciplines within healthcare. And now we're here going to talk about a master's in healthcare administration, Larry. In California, it just strikes me as quite interesting that in a state like California, where at least those of us who are in the Midwest think that is the left coast or whatever the comments are made about where you guys live. How did you get to the place where you said, let's develop a Christian faith foundation program to raise up future healthcare administrators?
For me, my experience has been primarily in healthcare administration, running programs and actually doing a lot of mergers, acquisitions, corporate finance. But I had the opportunity to work for a company called ChenMed Senior Medical.
Yeah, we've had Gordon Chen on the program, actually.
Yeah, so I worked for ChenMed. I ran 2 clinics for them, one in Jacksonville, Florida, and then one also in downtown Memphis, Tennessee, where the first day I was there, we had a shooting, shooters on the street. But we were there to love on patients and, to really bring that, optimize those patients into a system and standard of care that was, the foundation is love, accountability, and passion. And that's kind of the values. And so that's how I learned, the delivery of healthcare. We had Bible studies for our patients. Our patients came in to see our doctors who are, Christians, most of the staff Christians, just loving on them. As the patient left, they're like, I love you, doctor. And the doctor's like, I love you, Mrs. Smith. And we did a lot of, services for the patients through, ice storms and, through Hurricane Ian and just to really keep patients safe. And so, I learned a lot of that on the East Coast, but I brought it back to the West Coast. And I'm like, we have to be able to teach, this next generation how to care for students with Christian compassion, with servant leadership and really learning, maybe not so much best practice, but what does God want us to do? How does God want us to practice medicine and to administrate healthcare? And so that's really kind of where my passion came from. I heard about Jessup through the president, of Jessup and through some other community means. And Dr. Jackson referred me to Dr. Stubblefield, and just it was a great honor to kind of work and help build up this program to where it is.
Talk to us about what the mission and vision is for this new MHA program getting started in 2025.
A couple of things come to mind when we were thinking about this, and normally when we develop new programs, we do a needs assessment, and we do a either local or regional community evaluation of who are offering programs that we would like to also offer, and what are their particular characteristics. And one of the things that we do prior to that is we actually go out into the community of whatever that major is going to be in. Prior to even getting to developing this program, I had the privilege and honor to develop a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing program about 3.5 years ago. And in that process, God opened up so many doors for us with some of the executive leadership in most, if not all, of the healthcare agencies within the Central California area, and more locally, the greater Sacramento area. So I already had established some significant connections with the thought leaders and the administrative leaders within the healthcare paradigm. We use that as a vehicle to get a better understanding of what the needs were. We always want to do a needs assessment. If we're going to have a program, we're going to offer something, we know we're going to be unique, and I'll address that in just a minute. But we also want to make sure that the program addresses not only the current needs, but the potential future needs of whatever we're going to be offering. So I spent 3 to 6 months having conversations with literally every CEO, every COO at the 4 or 5 major hospital organizations within this area that we would be dealing directly with, trying to assess what their concerns were, what their needs were, and what they felt were the most challenging aspects of operating healthcare agencies. And that was hugely helpful in really putting together a program based on needs, not just what we think would be a good program. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a godsend for us. It helped us focus in areas that we may not have focused in otherwise. But here's the thing that really amazed me is in those conversations and in future conversations and continuing even now with our board members that we have, I am amazed, and I believe this is God's sovereignty, that we're dealing with secular institutions, the majority of them. Now, there are fairly strong Christian leaderships in those organizations, but they're not necessarily always the top or the executive or the thought leaders. But every single person we've dealt with, literally everyone we've had conversations with, has been 100% supportive of what we're doing. They understand we're a faith-based institution. They are actually encouraged by the fact that we're bringing in biblical principles of morality, good character, communication skills, servant leadership. That is what they are really looking for in trying to hire leaders. That the first thing they said is, if we can get a leader that comes in that we can trust, that it actually has some knowledge about the process or the organizational operation, that we don't have to spend a year going through training them and bringing them up to the level we want. So it'll lead into a future question, but that is what gave us the impetus to put this program together, knowing, well, first of all, there is a need. Second of all, that need is very specific. And third of all, is it really helped us focus our mission and our vision on what we want to do with this program. And that is literally to train up and to make our graduates impactful with the biblical principles that we're going to instill in them in a business and operational apparatus, because it's very, very servant-oriented. When we read about how Jesus actually dealt with pretty much everybody he dealt with, from the Pharisees all the way down to his chosen apostles, it was very orchestrated. It was very well organized, and it was all based on servant leadership. Mm-hmm. I use Matthew 20:28 that says, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and gave his life as a ransom for many. That is kind of the essence. We're here to serve. We want to make sure that our graduates are going to have a servant's attitude when they walk in. They're not going to be demanding. They're going to be asking what they can do to make this program better. And so that's kind of the vision that we're looking at as we go forward. I guess I would probably kind of encapsulate it in that one particular verse.
So if I could ask either one of you, George or Larry, so you have this mission, you have a vision, you have an idea with some incredible research in talking with executive heads of these healthcare institutions in your area. How are you going to make sure that your grads are going to be exactly what you've described for us, servant leaders? What are the ways that you're going to invest in them and take them? How long is the program?
It's 5 semesters, 21 months.
So how are you going to invest in these trainees, these students, to make sure they're what you envision them being?
Well, beside praying for them every day, I'm going to let Larry tell a little bit about the details.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we were talking about David Pepsney earlier, and we met with David, and he was instrumental in just really helping us kind of envision what it's going to be like to take a cohort through. So we really designed it around a cohort model. We also look at teaming. We in our first course we put teams together, and then we have a symposium. And we have mentoring that really helps these students get into the teams, work in teams, learn how to work in a team process. And then they will have mentoring through a Maxwell mentor that will help keep them, going through the program, being successful, and then really understanding, as they go through that, what are they doing really well at? What are they excelling at? And then hopefully by the end, we'll be able to put them into internships, working with these major healthcare systems to really find, those places of success that they will do really well in. I think we presented to Sutter Care at Home, several weeks ago, and we were unabashedly, presenting our program and saying, hey, we are Christians. We are looking to implement, servant leadership from a Christian perspective. And everyone has just been so accepting, like Dr. Stubblefield said. They've thought it, really gives us a unique value proposition as opposed to many other programs.
In addition to that, if I can kind of put it in, again, kind of encapsulate it a little bit so it kind of makes sense, that it is going to be a synchronous program. It's going to be an asynchronous program. It'll be online. But one of the factors that Larry alluded to is we want to bring a strong practical application component into an asynchronous environment. And the way you do that is every semester, we're going to have synchronous Zoom connections with their success coach, as Larry had said, as well as bring special speakers into that throughout each of the semesters that they go through, where they can talk specifically about the material that they're learning didactically in the classroom, but at the same time, we're going to have speakers that'll come and work with the professors and talk specifically from a more practical approach, what's happening actually in the real world. So not only do they learn from the textbooks, but they learn what's actually being applied in the industry on a day-to-day basis. And then at the end of every semester, as Larry alluded to, we're going to have a symposium where we actually take leaders in the industry and get all of our students together, and maybe even open up to the public, and bring these leaders in and have a symposium, a full-day symposium, where they're going to be speaking about the subject matters in a much broader sense and representing multiple hospital organizations. So again, they hear that practical application of what they're learning and what it looks like in real time. Mm-hmm. That'll be for the first 3 or 4 semesters. The last 2 semesters is what Larry referenced, is we're going to actually have an on-site arrangement with our partners where we take our students and we put them in different departments where they've shown an affinity and a skill set that they would like to get involved in. And then once they go into those departments within those health organizations, they will be able to contribute as well as learn in that environment based on their skill set that they've already been acquiring those first 3 or 4 semesters.
Before we continue with this week's episode, here's a special announcement for you. Those of us who serve in the healthcare professions have the best opportunities to point individuals toward Christ. One of our big priorities here at CMDA is to help train healthcare professionals to integrate their faith into their practice of healthcare. That's why we produce Faith Prescriptions. This on-demand video series will teach you to share your faith in ethical and appropriate ways with colleagues and patients. And it will also teach you to pray with patients and much, much more. To get started with the series, which is free to CMDA members, visit the CMDA Learning Center at cmda.org/learning. CMDA's Center for Wellbeing helps Christian healthcare professionals align with God, optimize well-being, and maximize influence. If you find yourself feeling burned out and overwhelmed by your daily demands, please reach out to our team in the Center for Wellbeing. After all, you pour yourself out for others every day, and this is a place to be refilled. Plus, we've been expanding our services in the center to help meet the great needs CMDA members have. You can sign up for certified coaching training courses that prepare you with the skills for coaching those in your sphere of influence. And our team can even help you walk through the difficult challenge of facing a malpractice lawsuit. Plus, we offer marriage enrichment weekends and retreats for our members to refresh and restore their marriages. Our team members have been where you are, and we want to help you through the challenges you face. Visit cmda.org/wellbeing to learn more. Let's jump right back into this week's episode.
When you look at all that, it is asynchronous, synchronous, and then you have symposiums, and then that face-to-face, on-site, intensive learning exposure. When they graduate, what we're hoping is that they'll already have a funnel development to that particular industry or that particular employer or hospital organization where they've proved themselves in that internship process, and they have what we would consider a better chance of being employed with that particular employer. So we find it as we're really training them, not just academically and developing that skill set, but also how to implement what they're learning in a real life experience and demonstrating that, and then getting training in what that looks like, and even getting correction if they need to, finding out where their weaknesses are, and then we can build those weaknesses into strengths.
How have either one of you seen within healthcare administration or management great examples, exemplars of integrating faith in the healthcare workplace?
Well, a couple of things. One is I've seen it from the clinical side, and I've seen it from the administrative side. In my conversations with partners and associated partners in the last 2 or 3 years in planning this, I was surprised at the number of significant leaders within most of the major healthcare organizations in California that are Christians, that are committed Christians. They hold very influential positions, and they are also very strong Christians. They are not closet Christians. So I just see that their impact is significant. I think that impact is because in the healthcare field, there's a kind of a paradigm shift going on within healthcare, and that is that it's always been about operational survival, and it's been, just claw your way to the top and become the most productive and have the greatest bottom line and all this. But there is a definite shift toward, and I hate to use this term, but toward humanity than there is toward the financial success of your program. Because they're finding out, and research will back this up, is when you start bringing in a moral and even a spiritual component into the healthcare paradigm, from organization to healing, they're starting to notice, based on empirical research, that it has a positive impact on the entire operational aspect. So those leaders are innovative and creative, and they can ignore certain things for a while, but after a while, it becomes so plain and clear that when they're looking to hire people now. In fact, I've noticed this in medical school applications. I do a lot of pre-med teaching and advising, and even the medical schools in their applications coming into their schools, they're not so concerned anymore about having a 4.1 or having the highest MCAT or being the most successful academic person. They're looking for people that can relate to another person. They're looking for good character development. They're looking for loyalty. They're looking for honesty. They're looking for communication that is authentic and not just placating. It's amazing the shifts that are going on even at that level right now. So the future looks really good, even though the future is very challenging in healthcare. But the shift toward looking for good moral individuals compared to whoever happens to be the greatest, best thing coming out of medical school is a tangible transition within the healthcare field right now. And it's beginning to permeate out into the executive levels, into the decision-making levels of every organization I've talked to.
Well, Dean, that's a surprise to me, actually. The last 7 or 8 years, I've talked to a lot of students and academic faculty or Christians in universities, and I come away with from those conversations thinking that there's a lot of antagonism, that somehow there's a filter, that if you actually have a faith, you want to keep it quiet. But you've just shared that you're seeing a trend that it's actually the opposite, that they're actually looking for more faith-based. And again, in context, you're in California.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we carry that burden every day. But, it is something that I've noticed. And again, I've been in clinical practice and the healthcare field for 40 years. And there is definitely, I believe, the beginning of a paradigm shift within healthcare. Now, the bottom line is still always going to be, what does the budget dictate? But I believe that the pathway that they're beginning to choose now is not so much corporately oriented. I believe it's much more people oriented and servant oriented, because they're seeing results. And those results are going to make that bottom line better for them. And I believe that is going to be a healthy direction. Even in California, I believe it's going to happen.
I think, too, we saw my experience at ChenMed, we had a great system, but it was the great people. It was the recruiting the Christians. It was recruiting those physicians, those nurse practitioners, all with that Christian faith, that then they could interact with those patients. They can care beyond just that clinical appointment, that we cared for them after that in terms of food delivery and, other, social determinants of health. And then they studied that, and you had Gordon on the show. ChenMed found that the patients were increasing their lifespan like 5 years. And so we didn't really study, was that because of the spiritual component? But, people came there because they had their mental health and spiritual health and physical health taken care of. And it made a huge impact on patients.
What kind of vision do you have, and what sort of investment in your near future students in terms of thinking, meeting needs globally?
Part of what we've planned is our original launch is more focused on finding individuals within local and regional healthcare operations. This is where we really would like to establish the foundation of getting applicants into our program that have a healthcare background in many senses. But that's only the beginning. What our goal is, once we establish the cohort model, once we establish the efficacy of our program, we really would like to take that globally. And we have two components of doing that. One is through David and his connections, and now I'm going to add you. And then number two would be, we also have a new individual who is handling our international online courses here at Jessup. And his experience is with international online courses. And that will be another leg that we're going to be taking. He has most of his connections in India and then Asia, where, as you had referenced, there's a lot of interest in this healthcare management, healthcare administration, mainly because of the significant need that is being realized within underserved areas and underdeveloped areas that have tremendous healthcare needs. And they have the volunteers, but they don't have the leadership. And that leadership is what we would be trying to scale and to provide those qualified in that area. So we have kind of a three-phase approach to this. One is locally, establish the foundation, get the program and the branding of that program solid, and then we would begin to expand domestically and then internationally and making it globally.
What kind of student? What are you looking for now, especially as this first cohort? Maybe you've already chosen them, but what do they look like? What previous education training have they had, and how do you get the best of the best for your first class?
We have our admissions team is led by a gentleman named Branson, and our process is that they get an application, and he takes them through some of the basic qualification processes. And then once they clear that, then Branson and I will sit down and we'll look at their resume, we'll look at the letters of recommendation, we'll look at academics, we'll look at employment records and all that. I am just astounded at these individuals who are wanting to join this program and to get their master's degree through Jessup. They know we're faith-based, and so far the applicants that I've looked at have been very high quality people. They are currently working in either a mid or even high management position. They are leaders within their departments. So I think these are people that understand, the leadership concepts that they would like to bring to their opportunities. We have several that already have their doctorates, their masters, their bachelors. Some are professionals. We have occupational therapists. We have physical therapists, people that want to switch from the actual clinical part of it and get into the the administrative part of it. So these are well-qualified applicants. These are not people just popping out of 4 years of a bachelor's program in sociology and deciding, well, I think I'll get into healthcare. So far, that's what we've been looking at. Not that the other opportunity would be a great opportunity for them, but so far, the people that are responding to what we're doing are those that are well entrenched in a healthcare agency of some form and that see the value of having a master's degree in administration for their career that they're choosing to follow. So that's why I said that our focus is literally much more within the healthcare environment right now. Mm-hmm. And in the greater Sacramento area, there's almost 300,000 employees within the healthcare programs that are out there in our agencies. So it's a pretty wide field, and that doesn't even count physicians. We're also noticing that some physicians are interested in thinking about transitioning toward the end of their career into an administrative position or an executive position as well. So that is another pool that we're actually going to be speaking with Kaiser, and Sutter will be talking to physicians about that as well. So I think what the basis right now is that if we're talking to somebody who understands healthcare at multiple levels, I think those are going to be the best candidates that we are looking for, at least initially, to establish a strong cohort.
How common is it for a Christian university like Jessup to pursue this particular master's? Are they a dime a dozen, or are they pretty rare in your perspective?
Well, let's put it this way. In the greater Sacramento area, which is a fairly large area, we're the only ones. We're the only faith-based, fully online, designed MHA program being offered. There are plenty of MHA programs out there. You'll have to go to Southern California to actually find a Christian or faith-based MHA program. There are a couple others, Fresno Pacific down in the valley, Simpson up north by Redding. But as far as Central California, we have a couple of Catholic schools that are offering them, but I believe that we are the only one that offers this type of a degree program that is a faith-based.
So for either one of you, Larry, are there programs, surely across the country, there must be some fairly long-standing established Christian universities that have had this vision as well, and like a big brother or big sister to you at Jessup that have helped you get this thing going?
It's interesting you brought that up, because I've had some conversations with some other leaders in other faith-based institutions. In Southern California, we have quite a few of them. And let me put it this, there are very few that have constructed their pedagogical and external apparatuses in the program to do what we're doing. That's why I believe this is relatively unique. There are some secular programs in California, locally and in Southern California, that do something similar to us, where they have a 2-year program, and the first year will be all academics, and then the second year will be all on-site. USC has a program like that. So, but when you take the multiplicity of exposures with a asynchronous online program that we are designing, there are very few that actually take that approach.
Yeah, I think too, if you look at being an instructional designer, curriculum designer for the program, we are looking at how do Christians tackle, these really kind of thorny issues, and we'll do that throughout the whole class, the 14 weeks. What do Christians think about AI? How do Christians get involved in tackling, healthcare for the vulnerable? Like, what's the Christian response to all of these issues? And they have to do that week by week by week. And that is one reason why I think many of those really well qualified candidates are looking at our program, is because they've been in healthcare, they have degrees, but not a Christian healthcare executive or administration type degree. Right. And we're going to be dealing with those thorny issues. How does God, lead us in these situations, and we'll look at those every week.
Well, Dr. George Stubblefield and Dr. Larry Gilmore, I want to thank you for joining me today on CMDA Matters. We've run out of time, but I can assure you I'm going to be connecting you with probably Mr. Warren White and Dr. Greg Neal from our Czech section and see if there's a way that there can be some mutuality there to help you guys out with this program. I wish you the best as you launch your program in January of 2025, and that you'll have a long lineup of Christ-following dedicated exemplars to be filling in healthcare institutions in your area to bring glory to God.
Absolutely. Keep us in your prayers as we do this launch.
We will do. Thank you for joining us today.
All right.
Thank
God
you
bless
so
you.
much. All right. God bless.
This conversation was very encouraging and inspiring to me, especially hearing about that paradigm shift in healthcare that Dr. Stubblefield mentioned, that healthcare training programs are seeing the value of incorporating faith into treating patients. I have seen firsthand in my career how praying with patients can make a marked difference, and I know that countless numbers of our CMDA members feel the same way. What a difference we could see in the coming years, friends, for healthcare training. If you'd like more information about this new program we've been discussing, I hope that you will visit Jessup, JESSUP.edu. And we've also included a link there in our show notes for you today. By the way, if you're involved in healthcare administration, make sure to check out CHECK. CHECK stands for the Christian Healthcare Executive Collaborative, and it's one of CMDA's specialty sections. It is a community of Christian healthcare executives who inspire and support one another. They seek to encourage connection and promote excellence and integrate faith and work. They also are very motivated to support and encourage involvement with healthcare missions, both domestically and internationally. If you'd like more information and to get involved, just visit cmda.org/check. And if you'd like more information about other CMDA specialty sections, you can just visit our website, cmda.org/specialty sections. It's that time of year when we're starting to buy Christmas gifts. Or maybe like me, you're one of those people who hasn't even started yet. Well then, I've got an idea for you from our online CMDA bookstore that directly relates to today's interview. It's a book that CMDA produced just a few years back called Servant Leadership, Proverbs for Today's Leaders by our CEO Emeritus, Dr. David Stevens, and our Vice President of Missions and Member Care, Pastor Burt Jones. This book uses pithy and succinct proverbs to teach you how to become the servant leader that you desire to be and you know God has called you to be. And as you apply these principles, you will become the servant leader God has designed for you to be, to influence generations of servant leaders to come. You can purchase this book and so many more that we have in the lineup in the CMDA bookstore. Just go to cmda.org/bookstore. Next Thursday, Dr. Bill Griffin, our Vice President of Dental Ministry, and I will be sitting down with Dr. Mark Topazian and Dr. Gabor Giori to focus on the topic of incorporating your faith into your practice through the international saline process. It's a conversation that we got to have recently at the Global Missions Healthcare Conference. As we close today's podcast, let me remind you about what I mentioned at the beginning of this program, that we have a $100,000 matching gift. Every dollar you give will be matched, dollar for dollar, up to $100,000. And it will help us toward our $1 million giving goal by the end of this year. By giving today, you can double the impact of your donation. As you do so, you will be helping CMDA and thousands of healthcare professionals at so many different points in their career bring the hope and healing of Christ to our world. That's what matters to CMDA, friends, this December, this Advent season, and CMDA matters. We'll see you next week, friends, God willing.
Thanks for listening to CMDA Matters. If you would like to suggest a future guest or share a comment with us, please email cmdamatters@cmda.org. And if you like the podcast, be sure to give us a 5-star rating and share it on your favorite social media platform. This podcast has been a production of Christian Medical and Dental Associations. The opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are not necessarily endorsed by Christian Medical and Dental Associations. CMDA is a nonpartisan organization that does not endorse political parties or candidates for public office. The views expressed on this podcast reflect judgments regarding principles and values held by CMDA and its members, and are not intended to imply endorsement of any political party or candidate.